Happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Authentic AF. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey, and with me is Rene.
Hi,
Rene,
everybody. Rene
yes,
from beautiful London.
exactly. I'm so excited to jump in on this conversation again, Rene. Last week was exciting, and I'm so glad that we decided to continue the conversation. I've had some feedback that we've intrigued a few folks with this whole idea of body language and mindset. So, what has happened for you over the last week? Have you had any additional feedback or thoughts or any things that come to mind from our last week conversation?
Oh yeah, I've been thinking about what we shared here, and I started like paying more and more attention. Although I have been doing this for almost 3 decades, 29 years. But when you're in the flow, and you go somewhere and you're in a supermarket, and you watch people's expressions, and you see couples looking at each other, and you see their facial expressions, and go like, like last time, I can't remember when I posted that on social media, but if you are a couple and you would look for 30 seconds in each other's eyes, what would happen? And it's
Wow.
so, yeah, this is so powerful. And some couples would say, well, we'll never look 30 seconds. But if you're a couple, just do it, try it out. You'll see your body language will change immediately, because body language, again, is not a language, it's based on a feeling. So when you look in each other's eyes for 30 seconds, your feelings change, so your body language changed. And it's yeah, but in the supermarket, I went for a walk, and then I watch people. I mean, it's the when I'm in, for example, in the tube in London, in the underground, that for me, that's like a kid in the candy store. I watch people. There's so many people on there, and all their behaviors and all this. Yeah, it's but one specific one was in the supermarket. I saw couples looking at each other, and I was really looking at it at couples. And it's amazing how some people react upon certain situations. It's yeah.
Well, it's interesting because as you said that, the looking in eyes, I've participated in different training modalities. And I recall now in a few of those different training, especially around team building and leadership, that one of the exercises includes something like that, where literally we would line up and, in two rows and basically look eye to eye with your partner that you're working with through the exercise. And it would be interesting. Some people have a hard time looking at one another directly in the eye. And I wonder, is that because, I know in the back of my mind, is it really that your eyes reveal the soul?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes people don't want to look in your eyes because they are feeling emotionally not at ease. They are like, I don't trust that person, or they have something that happened in the past and you remind them of that person, or they're just scared, or, but the best way to avoid these kind of things as a person when you are looking at somebody, and I mean, you had that experience, I guess. I had that experience when people look in your eyes and they look through you, right? I mean, when that happens and you're not at ease at all, you look to the third eye here. So when you look into the third eye, you don't really look in the eyes of the person. However, the person looking at you has the impression you look in their eyes when you look at the third eye. And there's so many people that now use that, and I say that was such an amazing tip, because before I was scared to look in somebody's eyes for no reason. We don't know what it is, and there's always a reason. But now they do that, and they're like, wow, this is working. I said, yeah. And along the way, people start like being comfortable with that, and automatically, subconsciously, unconsciously, they start looking really in the eyes.
Mhm.
It becomes a habit, and yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Well, I think
But
it seems like it creates that a different level of intimacy. I can remember there was a period where I was feeling exhausted from people, if you will, and
yeah,
I really didn't want to let anyone in. And so I would do a short glance, but not allow, I felt like if I allow you to engage and connect with me by giving you, an entry point through my eyes, then I'm
yeah,
kind of letting you into my space. And if I don't want to let you in, then I don't. I won't give you that. It's a gift of sharing some of me, and I don't want to share that right now with everybody.
Yeah,
And I
and
remember consciously going through that kind of, space where I wouldn't let anybody in.
yeah, your eyes will go a certain direction for sure, but
Yeah.
also unconsciously you'll close your arms.
Uh,
You're not aware of it, but when
yeah.
people talk to you with open hands and yes and this and that, and all of a sudden, yeah, boom,
Yeah.
closed. You go like, wait a minute. I pay attention to it. It's my profession. But the thing is, when people do that, I will immediately change the subject to a complete different subject. I will even shock them. And when you shock people, they open up again.
Really?
There's a story about a like pretty famous coach, and he was married. It's a true story, by the way. He was married, and his wife went through a depression, a very severe depression, and that severe, she had to go to hospital. And one night he was crying, watching television, and why my wife and why me, and because he was so in love with her. And then all of a sudden he says he saw something on television. It was a promo video about from Tony Robbins, by the way. And he took tickets to go to Tony Robbins, and he went to the hospital, and he says, "You're going to with me. You're going to this event." And in the hospital, they say, "You can't do that with your wife," because he said, "You know what? Look at me, watch me." And he took his wife and went off. He was not allowed to do it because of a situation. And then they went to Robbins' event, and then Robbins asked the question in the room, "How many of you have a situation? How many of you?" And he bought the two most expensive tickets, is right in front of the stage. But when you when you raise your hand and you're in the sitting in the front row, you're
Mhm.
asking for trouble, right? So Tony came down and he said, and it's not about Tony, it's not about the coach, it's about the principle behind it. He says, "Tell me about your problems." And the lady says, "Well, I don't have any problems." And he says, I agree. And now what's your problem?" And she says, "I don't have any problems." And the husband says, the coach, he says, "Well, she's been going through a depression and is going very bad and very sad and da, 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 da. In fact, it's a drama." And he says, "Okay, got it. Lady, can you confirm this?" And she says, "Well, nah, yeah, no, no." Now you have to know there's 8,000 people in the room. There's 6 big, huge screens in the room. The room is silent. You could hear a mouse walk in the room. And the camera is on the head of the lady, zoomed in. And Tony says, "Lady, when was the last time you came?" And the audience go like, "What?" The lady, "What?" Because this is a question from a stranger. You don't
Right.
ask the lady. That is not
Right.
done.
Right.
But the whole principle behind it is that when you shock somebody, the brain opens up for a split second, and what you say in that moment, you take for real.
Mm.
So he says, when he says that, immediately after, grabs her with the shoulder, which is an anchoring point, and he says, "Lady, you are healed." And Tony left. And again, it's not about the coach or the lady or Tony. It's about the principle. When you shock somebody in that split second, whatever you say, people will take it for real. And the lady went home, never went back to the hospital, never been depressed anymore. How crazy is that?
Well, it's not though, because that's what we're talking about. It really is about mindset. Remember, we hear the analogy that is simple, but I don't think people really understand some of the simplicity of these analogies. So I always go back to the one of, is the glass half full or is it half empty? It's the same glass. It has the same amount of liquid, but it's all
Sure.
about how you perceive that glass. And it's kind of what I was telling you earlier today, that I had an experience with some recently where we were exchanging some information, and the person had a complete reaction to the information that they were receiving. And they came into a whole bunch of things, and I said, what's really interesting is that I don't arm wrestle with people about their mindset and their beliefs. As
Mm.
soon as someone says to me, well, I can't do this because of whatever, I believe them and I move on. I
You
believe
don't.
you, because
Yeah,
the second
you
that you
don't
said
fight
what
with you
you
dance
can't
with them.
do, or what, I don't
No.
have the time to work on your mindset. You are right. You can't, because you've
Mm,
claimed that you can't. And that's kind of one, in fact, when I talk about mindset shifts, I talked about the 7 shifts. And
mhm,
that's really the first place, is when you move from reactions to responsiveness to information. And a lot of times people don't even recognize that they are so programmed by their behaviors. Again, their mindset, that an
mhm,
autopilot, there's a reaction. And so, like you described in this experience with Tony Robbins and shocking the woman, that he shocked her out of
mm,
her mindset and her blocks to, wait a minute, is that true? There's a book that I read years ago, and it begins with this whole thing of questioning: is the statement that you made true? Is it true?
mm,
Or
mm.
is that just something that you have agreed with at this particular point?
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And
Yeah.
there's such a thing that is, I call that the survival brain. The sur the that part of the brain, the oldest part of the brain, by the way, who is always looking for danger. But when you say, "I agree," in the thinking of the other person, in the survivor brain, it goes like, "Hey, wait a minute. That was not what I expected." And they will react again because they're in a reaction mode. I don't know if the pyramid of levels of consciousness, the higher you go, the less people react and the more they act. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So and when you say, "Oh yes, I agree," you will not be able to do that. They go like, "Huh?
Right.
They didn't
Right.
expect that." So again, they go in survival mode and they have to respond, right? And yeah, what you say makes real sense. Makes big sense. Makes a lot of sense.
And so it's so interesting, because that's where I think why I was so excited about being able to have this conversation and create
Yeah.
this space with you and I, because again, what you're saying, what you're doing, and the fact that your body is revealing, and sometimes your authenticity, even when you're saying one thing, but and that's why people have feelings of incongruence, when it's like, wait a second, this is not adding up, or as
Mm,
late folks have said, the math is not mathing. It's like, it's not,
true,
you're telling
true.
me this, you wanted me to follow this, but I'm seeing a whole nother something. And even your behavior, your body movements are making me question everything that you're saying over here, because they're not congruent. And so we were talking again about a few other situations where other people have, uh, looked at someone deeply involved with their body language. Which example are you wanting to share? You had mentioned that you had a couple that you were thinking about today. Are you able to share one of those examples?
Not really a couple in specific, but what I do is that I watch people, and if I have the chance, I listen to what they say. You shouldn't be doing it, right? There's three ways of observing somebody. The first way is to observe them with your eyes. You look. You can't hear, you can't talk, but you look, right? Your eyes, you use your eyes. And the first thing I always will do is analyze the feet. And people say, why the feet? The feet are the body parts the furthest away from the brain, so the less controllable. So when a couple is speaking to each other and one person has one foot pointing away, that means that person in that couple, that person doesn't really want to engage in the conversation. On the contrary, they want to leave the conversation. The way they want to leave is where the foot is pointing towards. So most of the time when you're in a room and the person wants to leave the room, one foot will be pointing towards the door if they don't want to engage in the conversation or if they want to finish the conversation, right? They might be in a conversation, a very interesting conversation, and all of a sudden the person turns one foot away. You, if you see this, wrap up the conversation because there's not 100% attention. And that's what I look for in the first place. That's what I want to explain. The three ways of analyzing is you can watch somebody with your eyes. First thing I watch, the feet. The second thing I watch is the micro expressions, facial expressions,
Mhm.
and then the rest of the body. But it's very impressive when you do that. And then the second way of analyzing body language is when you can listen. So when you can listen to a conversation, you shouldn't be doing it. But anyway, people are sometimes so loud, you can't avoid it, right? You're sitting in a restaurant next to another couple, and you can hear what they say. They're very loud, and then, for example, that person might be a very interesting person to do business with. You don't know, and then but you listen, and you want to find out: is this an emotional person or a rational person? Is this a team player or a solo player? Is this an extrovert or an introvert? Is this a person who is very active and fast or rather calm and soft? You're going to analyze that person in such a way that, hey, if I start a conversation with them, I want to level with them.
Mm.
That means if they are active and fast, they are very extrovert, they are team player minded, all of these things, if they like this, start speaking the same language. Because when you leave that conversation, that person will say, hey, that's the first one that understands me. And the only thing we did was leveling, right? If I have that, somebody says you're speaking to somebody and they are completely contradicting. So you say something, and, oh no, I wouldn't do that. And no, 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 thank you so much. It's you have to level, but make sure it makes sense, right? Don't fake it, because karma is always somewhere around the corner, right? And the third way to analyze body language or to analyze a person is that you can watch, you can listen, and you can talk. And when you can speak to somebody, you can ask them questions. And that's the mistake a lot of people make. They don't ask questions, they do the talking. But when you do the talking, you are sharing information, you are sharing your body language, and the other person just listens. Interesting. You should be doing this. Ask questions. Why, what, where, when, who, which, how, the open questions. And then you close your mouth, you zip it, and then you listen. You remember these three monkeys? Listen, listen, see, and right. It's a Japanese thing. Hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil. And but when you when you do that as a person, you become the moderator of a conversation. And the only thing you did is asking questions. When that person leaves, they will say, "Wow, that's so amazing. I love that guy or girl so much. I mean, we had such an amazing conversation." And the only thing you did was ask questions. You have all the information. You go watch their body language. You could see or analyze if they were straightforward with you or are lying or whatever. There's so many, and that's for me is so important. When I analyze people and I'm in the supermarket, again, go back to the beginning of the story. When I analyze couples, I watch their feet, I watch their micro expressions, I listen if it's possible, and even if it's possible, I would chat with them. I mean, so I couldn't. I couldn't. I was overhearing your conversation. Apologize for that, but it was so interesting. Can I ask you a question? 99 of the time, 99 of the times, 99% of the times, I will say, "Oh yes, well, what do you want to know?" And then you ask your question, and you might say, "Hey, I could hear that you're in cars, in two cars. Why would that be?" Oh, well, in my days and when I was young, blah, 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 blah. And they start. But that's so important, to ask questions, and then you start your analysis. But you start with watching people, analyzing with your eyes, then eyes and ears, and then eyes, ears, and mouth. And that's how I do it when I'm in the supermarket. When I analyze a couple, for example, or analyze an individual, or two people having a fight, which happens also. I mean, in life, it's a normal thing. But yeah.
Well, it was so interesting because we were having a team meeting, myself, Sterling, who's my son, and Betty, who's going to be the president and chief operating officer in the organization. And so we're working on some preliminary things. And so I wanted to set them up so that we at least had an everyday conversation so that we can really solidify what's happening, because a lot is going to happen over the next several weeks, sort of big shifts. in where we are, and especially, you know, with my shifting to Jamaica, and all of these other things are all happening real time. And during the conversation, of course, I'm super hype. I'm, you know, da 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 da, and I was saying something, and Sterling reacted to me about, why are you yelling? And I was like, you know, I'm all animated. I'm blah, 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 blah. We're on the phone, so we're not looking at one another. It's just me pacing. And that's the other thing that usually people don't know, is that usually I'm kind of pacing. I'm hyper energy, you know, because if I'm in creative mode, you know,
Mm.
and so I kind of, you know, took a step back a little bit, and, you know, tried to adjust, you know, my volume. And then after that conversation with the three of us, then Sterling and I had a one-on-one. But then last night I found myself kind of ping ponging in my mind. Wait a second, what is he saying about, why am I yelling, acting like in some ways that me being loud or whatever is wrong or is offensive? It wasn't disrespectful. It's just, yeah, I'm
Mm.
making a point and I'm adding extra emphasis. So I asked him, we had another meeting this morning. I said, wait a second. I said, have you ever played on a sports team? Of course, I know the answer. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, and so you played football, you played all these different sports, you've been varsity. So you're trying to tell me that your coach has never raised their voice?
Yeah.
What's the difference? It's acceptable if it's a coach, but I'm the CEO. I'm coaching my team on a big win. So you don't think that I'm going to be animated? I'm
Yeah.
not going to be as passionate as your coach is about you winning, when I'm trying to get us all in alignment to win. I don't know. What are your thoughts? What I said was, is listen, we always can have a space where we agree to respectfully disagree. I'm not asking you to agree. I'm saying you can present your point. I may not agree with it, but I'm going to respectfully hear it, and I'm going to allow space for it, and I'm going to consider it. I'm always going to be considerate. But in some cases, there's an action that needs to be taken,
Yeah.
and I'm the captain of the ship. So I
Well,
ultimately
yeah,
have to.
I got you. I got you. The thing is, well, what I suggest in this case is the best way to handle this is to build it up. And what I mean about building up is about the mirroring technique, mirror and matching. And it's been used in a lot of ways, in a lot of situations, in businesses, in relationship therapies, and in all kinds of therapies. It's been used as mirror and matching. That means that if you are like this, I will copy paste your posture, and then you will change like this. I will copy paste your posture, and then you will change like this. I will copy paste your posture. I will copy paste you 5, 6, 7 times, and then before you change, I will change. Chances are 99% you are going to copy paste me.
Hmm.
That's another way of leveling, and it's been proven that it works, but you have to train yourself into it. And if it doesn't work from the first day forward, don't panic. You have to practice, 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 practice. How do you make babies? You practice, 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 and one day, bang. And it's how it works, doesn't it? And it's just it's the same with body language. You practice, 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 and when you practice that mirror matching system, that you start copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, and then before they change, you change. It's the same with conversations. If you are loud and active and they are not, copy paste them first,
Hmm.
and then build it up, build it up, build it up, and before you know it, what you express will come back to you.
Hmm.
There's a very interesting study about, people say, yeah, I'm single and I'm not getting on the market and blah 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 blah, and I say that's normal. They go, what? I said, yeah. And I learned it myself from somebody. They said, make a list of 10, 15 sentences how your partner is right now in the moment. How is your partner? And for me, for example, my partner is a non-smoker, is an entrepreneur, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to reveal everything here on, but,
Sure, sure.
but you make a list of 10, 15 items, and then you start living like that.
Hmm.
Sooner or later, you'll create an energy and attract that same person because you're sending out that energy. So if you act like what you wrote on paper, and you have to write it on paper, not on a computer, on paper, that's a completely different experience. You write it on paper, and then you live like that. So you become an energy in a certain way, and you send that energy out there on a certain frequency, and chances of attracting that person is 99%. The
Wow.
question though is that, what are your values? What are you writing down on paper? And are you ready to live the way of what you wrote on paper?
Ooh, that is a good nugget. We may have to continue that one. That may be one that
And
we have to throw out to folks to work on.
yeah, and this is a combination of what you are teaching in terms of the mindset and in terms of the body language. It's a combination of both. And
Well,
and mhm.
yeah, no,
Continue.
that's really powerful because,
Yeah.
to me, that's what I suggest oftentimes as part of a process of defining the vision for your organization, right? What is it that you're looking at as a future reality of the type of organization that you're creating? What are some examples? Not necessarily because you're benchmarking exactly, but yeah, so that you can, if it is that you have not necessarily experienced full on the level of organization that you want to create, where are some examples of those organizations out there that you can sort of study, understand, and if it is that you see value, model, and then create that as an intention for your own organization. But I hadn't thought
Mhm.
about it the way that you just suggested as it relates to partner in relationship. And of course, why not?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I?
Well, it's I think about Jim Rohn, for example, who once said, um, "Watch out the 5 people you surround yourself with, because that's who you become." And the 5 people you surround yourself with have a certain way of living, a certain way of expression, expressing themselves, a certain way of putting that energy on a frequency out there. That's why you become like them, when you surround yourself with them on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And that's why it's so important to take a decision for yourself and not to wait till somebody else takes a decision to become like them. The
Mhm,
decision you take yourself is that, how is my future partner? And then you'll live like that,
mhm.
because that's what you want. It will never be 100%. That's not possible. The perfect partner doesn't exist. You know, this is not a fairy tale recipe. This is, if I can say it like that. But it is a fact that when you put it out there and you start living like that, first of all, your own life will change completely, because you were not used to live like that, right? I used to be a smoker, and for some reason I was motivated to become a non-smoker by it's a different story about a dear friend of mine who had an offer for me, and then in a split second I changed. It changed my whole life completely. It's been over 10 years now, but it changed completely my eating habits, my taste, my people. Like, when you smoke, your clothes are smelling, and your car is smelling, and everything is smelling, and then your eating habits and your health and your energy, and it's like, wow, why have I been a smoker for so many years? The thing is with everything, when you change your thinking, when you change your questions, there's another one. Some people say, why me, why this, why? Change your questions, you will change your outcome. You get different answers that will have an influence on your thinking. That thinking will have an influence on your body language, and that body language will attract what you're thinking about. So when you change your question, you'll change your mindset. When you
And
change your
it's so
mindset,
true.
you change your body language. By changing your body language, you attract different people. I had
Oh,
that
it's so true.
conversation. I
It's
had,
so true. Sometimes people don't want to own that part, hold themselves accountable. But I do remember having sort of this conversation at one time that I thought I was frustrated, with the Almighty, talking about, well, why is it that, whatever, whatever, whatever. And I remember kind of asking a question and going to sleep. And then the answer being that that's not the question.
mm,
Change your question.
exactly.
And I got up the next day and I was like, oh, and then as
Yeah,
soon as I changed the question, the situation shifted.
yeah.
It felt like
It's
almost instantly. And it was like, dang, really? All this time, all that was me needing to work through a block that I had that was allowing me to see because I was asking this question and it was the wrong question.
Yeah, it's with everything. I mean, and if you're motivated and if you want something, you can. And if people say you can't, I mean, I was with Jack Canfield in London, and we had a dinner, and he was telling his story about the levels of consciousness, and he says the higher you go in levels of consciousness, the less people. It's like a pyramid. And but the higher you go in levels of consciousness, you go from the survival mode to managing your life to and go into relationship, become a mentor, become a, the levels of consciousness go higher and higher and higher. There's less and less people. But the higher you go, the less those people in survival mode can get to you. That's the first
Mm.
thing. So the influence becomes lower and lower and lower. The second thing is the higher you go, the less people. However, the higher the quality of the conversations and the outcomes. The only time you're screwed when you're in these higher levels of consciousness is that there's less and less people. And when you're single, there's less and less opportunities.
No, that makes sense. But that's also kind of the whole idea behind,
Yeah,
creating the tribe and creating those communities where like-minded individuals can find ways to
exactly.
connect, because
Yeah,
we're going to have those desires, right? The same
yeah,
folks. We desire this level of a rich conversation, for example, right? It'd be great to kind of have this with a group of folks engage real-time life. Well, lo and behold, as usual, I tell you, Rene, these conversations go fast. We're already at the top of the hour for our conversation for today.
mm,
Um, we want people to come back and listen in again next week. What do you think? Maybe some last closing thoughts before we say goodbye until next week, that we want to leave them with.
yeah. What I would like to share in as a last thought is that if you want to change in your life, you have to take a decision. And if you don't want to go through the pain to experience the pleasure, you will have short time pleasure, but the long time pleasure, you have to go through the pain first. And I had that experience with the smoking. I went through a short term of pain, 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 pain. And nowadays I can experience the pleasure of being a non-smoker and have a completely different lifestyle. But it's the same with everything. If you change your mindset, you might have to go through some painful situations before you can have the pleasure for the rest of your days. And it's the same with your body language. If you adjust your body language, if you like the last thing we were talking about, change your question, you will change your answers, you will change your mindset, that will change your body language, and you will attract different things and different people. And some people say it's always the same, it's always me. Of course, because you're not changing your questions. So for people listening right now or watching us and say, change your questions, you will change your life for sure. And I look forward to see all of you next week.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. What a perfect
And
close. So
you, do you have a last quote, a last statement, or
no,
last
no, I
thing?
think you
No?
said it best. I mean,
Okay.
that's really, I mean, that's what this is about. We want you guys to come
Mhm.
together. We're talking to you about something that may be a little bit out of your normal conversation. The understanding of how you can really get to your authentic self in everything that you're doing, and the things that tend to contribute to that ability is, one, being able to be clear about your mindset and how your mindset is showing up wherever you
Mm.
go, but more importantly, recognizing that your body language is telling the truth.
Yeah, I had a maybe one final thing. I'm going to respect the time. Is that I had a conversation with a lady this afternoon about relationships, and she told me so many things, and I said, "Can I stop you for a minute?" She says, "Yes." The only question you have to ask yourself: does that make sense to me?
Mm,
And what's in it for me?
mhm,
And this is not selfish.
mhm,
If you ask yourself, what's in it for me? And does it make sense to me? And if it doesn't make sense, step away.
mhm.
Because so many things go wrong in life, and especially in relationships. And then the kids coming along, and I mean, the whole thing that might go wrong or is going wrong is ask yourself in the beginning, does this make sense? Ask the hard questions in the beginning. Do you still want kids? Yes or no? Do you want this? How do you see life? Ask the hard question. In the beginning, the first 3 months, we all know that it's all glitter and glamour and sunshine and roses, and then after 3 months, real life kicks in. most of the not always, but most of the time. But why don't you ask the hard questions in the beginning? And she says, "Wow, this makes so much sense to me." I said, "Yeah." But anyway, let's wrap it up, because otherwise I'm going to keep talking, talk.
Well, that's the whole reason that we created the space for this conversation, is we definitely have a lot that we could talk about. Well, again, thank
Absolutely.
you, everyone. We hope you join us again on Monday, same time, same place. Until then, be good and make sure that you realize your mindset and your body language contribute to your ability to be authentic AF.
Thank you so much, everybody. See you next Monday.
Bye.
Bye bye.